Hey, what's up? It's Jack, and welcome to the long-awaited part 2 of my freestyle tutorial. So thanks for your patience. It's taken a while to put things together, especially the whole list of algs. So yeah, this is just going to be focused on how to learn the corner commutators for freestyle. So yeah, hope you enjoy and benefit from this. Okay, so when learning freestyle, I think there are two major ways to go about doing it. One is to come up with commutators on the fly, so just intuitively doing that. I wouldn't recommend this if you want to get quick and competitive in free blind, mainly because those comms would probably be pretty slow compared to the speed optimized comms used nowadays. And also when doing that, you kind of have to think about each comm before you do it normally. So that can be pretty time consuming and it's like slow. And the other approach, which is the one I'm taking, is the list-based approach. So learning from list of algs that are kind of optimized for speeds. But a lot of the, I guess, lists can be like pretty daunting to look at, and some have like fancy finger tricks and all that. So I just taken it upon my own to create a list specifically designed for people learning freestyle for the first time. And yeah, here it is. Okay, so once you click on the spreadsheet link in the description below, you'll come across to here. And I'll just be going over the learning progression that I recommend and just focusing on the corners for this part, essentially. Yeah, first of all, I recommend that you switch to this order, so memorizing corners and edges followed by executing the edges and the corners. Yeah, majority of the top blind solvers do things this way, and I'll be doing this tutorial on the assumption that you use this order. And then I recommend that you switch to C as your corner buffer, or UFR as most people call it, and learn all of the parity alg for it. So this is kind of like old Pokemon, but for the new buffer, essentially. Most of these cases are setups to PLLs, some of these are standalone algs. And yeah, before you even learn these parity algs or any of the corner algs, if you use something different from the Speph's lettering scheme, I recommend that you just go to File and download or make a copy of the spreadsheet so that you can customize your lettering scheme here. Okay, so now I'm just over to the copy of the spreadsheet that I just made. I've already customized this, and this is essentially what I use myself. So I used to use M2 and OP, so I still wanted to keep my old lettering scheme, so I just kind of swapped the letters with my new buffer, as you can see. Also replace Q with Y because I just like Y better. And as you can see, after I've inputted my new letter scheme, all of the letter pairs update. Instead of E being there, for instance, it's M, and yeah, totally customizable letter scheme, so that's pretty rad. So as you might have seen from the spreadsheet, most of the commutators have setup moves. So what I've showed up till now are commutators without setup moves, or pure commutators, as some call them, but most of them have setup moves, and that's mostly for two reasons. One is because you just can't do a pure commutator, like in this case. This is for BR. And other one, which is like the main reason in my case, is just to help optimize the commutators for speed, because generally not rotating and just doing extra setup moves is faster than rotating and doing like fewer moves. So I'm just going to go through some examples of commutators with setup moves. They can be pretty confusing, honestly. So the way in which I recommend learning them is, like I said before, seeing which pure commutator it sets up to, and also linking it with other columns that you know if possible. So for this case, what I have is R prime to what is actually this case for AP. So again, R prime setup, insertion, interchange, undo insertion, undo interchange, and undo setup. Also, for a bunch of cases, you can kind of cancel moves as well. So in this case, this is an R prime setup, and first move of the insertion is also R prime. So you can kind of do an R2 like this at the beginning. And yeah, here's another case. In the sheet, I had an F setup. And if you check the pure comm inside that, it's actually this case. And not all the pure comms just so happen to include your buffer piece, but if it does, then it's quite nice to take note of. So yeah, this case is just an F setup to this one. The commutator would go like this. So now I'm just going to briefly explain inverses. So for example, this case, which is for BG, the inverse case would be GB, so, whoops, this is not right. Yeah, so GB, so just swapping those two letters around. And yeah, all you have to do is just swap the order of the interchange and insertion, and that's it. So in this case, you insert first, then do the interchange. But here, you do the interchange first, and then the insertion. So for example, in the case of BR, which I showed before, so this is just involving inverses. It's the same thing. You just swap the order of the interchange and insertion pretty much. So setup is the same. Then here I insert before doing the insertion. Wait, I do the insertion before doing the interchange, yeah. And here I do the interchange before the insertion. So now onto the actual quarter commutators. So yeah, I've just grouped everything by sticker. So all these algs include the B sticker as part of the commutator, and yeah, same for all of these. And this list is kind of based around the assumption that you'll learn the inverses of each commutator. So when you learn BA, be sure to learn AB as well, DB while you learn BD, and so on. And if you learn the inverses of each of these algs, well, that's like the reason why like the number of algs per set kind of dwindles over the course of the sheet, and I kind of bundled down a bunch of these at the end because there was so little left. Yeah, the way I tend to learn algs, so I'll just go through it myself, is by using flashcards. Also doing that and also just incorporating it into solves. But I'll just cover the flashcards thing right now. So I'll just, one thing you can do, and it's also the way in which why I organize the algs this way, is so that you can kind of copy and paste sets in here. So I'll just go to this website, which is what I've used to learn algs, and go to create new sets. If you use a different flashcard website or something, then feel free to use that. It's probably some sort of equivalent. I'll just do B set here. Change access to private because I have insecurities. And you just go to import flashcard set here. Just copy and paste everything. Everything will just be sorted out for you. Import data, create sets. And yeah, you can just, what I recommend you do is just go through maybe the algs first. So executing BA and also the inverse, so AB, and just checking it with the alg I put on the sheet, and just going through all those and so on. What I like to use a lot is the memorize function here. Essentially what it does is I also put shuffle as well. Just kind of picks the algs in the pairs in random order. And yeah, what I do is execute this alg and the inverse, so XP as well. See if I can do them right. If I don't, I click I was wrong, and if I get it right, I do I was right. And I just do that a bunch of times with the algs. I'll just go through these kind of randomly. And yeah, at the end, essentially what happens is that all the algs that you weren't sure about, I get to go through again, and yeah, it kind of goes to round 2, then round 3, and so on until you're pretty confident with all the algs pretty much for that set. Yeah, also generally when learning these algs, I recommend that, especially for like corners, since a lot of them are like use the RUD moveset, try to find like associations and links between different types of algs. Also seeing if maybe it sets up to a previous alg you've learned already. Also just seeing like the pure com within. Just try to link it to something that you're familiar with pretty much. So for example, BA is literally just an A perm. I've also left space here so I can just write some notes. So I could just write A perm. For instance, BF, if you check like the pure com inside it, you'll realize that it's actually the same as another case, which is down here. So DP, so you could kind of think of this as like a setup to DP. Going over some more complicated cases, because I know some of the ones with a lot of setup is going to be pretty daunting. By the time you get down to, for instance here, this is actually a setup to a D prime setup to this case, and this case is actually a free move setup to this case here, which I showed in part 1. So just looking for a bunch of links and associations is, I think, how you'll learn these pretty effectively. And using a mixture of flashcards and incorporating them into actual solves. Okay, so for corners, a lot of the algs, pretty much the vast majority of them, include the RUD moveset. So obviously a lot of variety stuff and U and D moves. So you generally want to get pretty good at variety stuff. Most people don't really have a problem with. U and D moves, you kind of want to learn all the possible combinations of pushing and pulling them, essentially. So just for the U layer, just like all the index stuff like I'm showing right now, double flicks with both hands, and D move the same thing for the ring finger instead, being able to double flick with both hands as well. Although the righty double flick you only really use for those weird comms that kind of have those F2s in the middle, but it's kind of like a D2. And for the F moves, which sometimes come up, mostly just index and thumb stuff should be okay. Whatever you find comfortable. There might be some other cases where some other, I guess, weird finger tricks like could come up that you could use. This example, this case here. So here I'm just kind of dragging my right ring here, but it's mostly the ones I showed before. If you can get good at just all the combinations of U and D moves, then you should be fine for the most part. So now I'll just briefly cover an example solve with the corners, and also briefly cover how parity works. So you can incorporate your corner comms in a full solve if you like. So for this case, buffers now at C, so this goes here. Buffer piece, so I'll start a new cycle down here, and that goes to H, and that goes back to here, so D. So once you determine you have an odd number of targets for corners, you know you have parity. And for parity, like I mentioned before, you pretend the B edge is at C, and no, you pretend the B edge is the C edge, and vice versa. So once you solve all the edges, it should look like this pretty much. So that once you do the parity alg at the end of corners, these edges will switch back. I won't really cover the edges. You can look up the full example solves I'll probably have at the end of this tutorial series if you're still confused about how it works. But yeah, when you do memorize edges, you will always have an even number of targets once you find out you have parity in corners, and you mentally swap the two front top edges. So yeah, I'll just skip straight to corners because that's the focus. So AP. WN. LV. DH, and D, the parity, which swaps those two edges we mentally swapped in edges, which we don't really do, but that solves a cube. So yeah, hope you benefited from this tutorial. So in general, just learn the parity algs for corners and use those as a placeholder while you learn all of the corner commutators. And yeah, in terms of learning the commutators, generally just try to remember that your ultimate goal is to recall these like effortlessly. So just like picking BF and just doing the comp for that. So in other words, your ultimate goal isn't to gain a full-on intuitive understanding of the comms. Your ultimate goal is to recall these algs flawlessly and without thinking. It's kind of like a T-curve, like you see this case and you just do it. So the whole intuitive side of it is just to like help you understand it better. But for example, like if you recognize, for example, commutators like just a D setup to something you already know before, then that's like a lot less to think of rather than like the whole commutator, if that makes sense. So in general, just remember that your goal is to kind of think of these as algs. But since the commutators are intuitive, it kind of also makes sense to have a general grasp of how they work. So yeah, just be sure to keep that in mind while you're learning. And yeah, see you in part 3 where I will cover the edges.